Welcome, everybody, to the Ogden Way podcast, a place where we talk about the stories of Ogden by telling the story of Ogden's people. And today, I'm really excited to tell the story about Ogden City Police Chief Jake Sube. Chief, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I often go around town and I brag about you and say that you're one of the best decisions that I've made since becoming the mayor, and I mean it.
Well, I appreciate that.
Right.
It means a lot. Something I definitely strive to live up to.
Well, good. And I also tell people, and you and I have talked about it a lot, is that the most important relationship for a mayor, and they teach this at mayor school, is the relationship between a mayor and a police chief. If that relationship is not intact, nothing else is going to work. So I'm glad that we have a good relationship, and it's been fun having you as my chief and also you becoming my chief, and I hope me becoming your mayor together.
Yeah, I'm grateful. So, I feel like we've both kind of started at the same place, and I think we see very closely, very similarly, and it's really allowed us to do a lot of great things early on in my tenure as the chief. It's been great. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And a couple of the things that I look for when I hire is I like to hire for drive and I like to hire for fit. And so the questions, as you might recall when we had our interview process, were really geared toward fit, but also drive.
Sure.
And clearly I've seen both of those things in you, a fit for me in the way that we work together, but also a fit for Ogden. And I thought that might be a good place to start today, is to maybe, if you're willing, to share your answer to the question that I asked you in the interview of why Ogden.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I guess it goes a long way back to being a child and growing up on Ogden Avenue, attending T.O. Smith at the time when it was T.O. Smith, and just my experiences around here. Grew up with my mom and dad and my brother here in Ogden into elementary. We did move around a lot. We were a low income family. My dad, blue collar worker, hard worker, and really most of the drive I have is probably because of him and his work ethic. And so I just saw that in my family. And growing up in Ogden, everything we did was Ogden. Everywhere there was, I didn't even know Salt Lake existed as I grew up, or even into Davis County. It was just when you went into town, you went into Ogden, and this is where I went, at the Ogden Mall, the Newgate Mall. This was my stomping grounds as a kid, to the point of even dragging the Vard, and so this is just everything I knew, and kind of learned who I was as an individual was just my experience living in and around Ogden. My grandparents lived right on the outskirts in South Ogden, and so everything we did with them drifted back into Ogden as well. So just my whole kind of growing up experience, when we talked about the city, it was Ogden, and so that just meant a lot to me. Which is when eventually I decided to become an officer. This is where I wanted to work. This is the city I wanted to work for.
And if you're going to work in Ogden, the street Ogden Avenue carries a lot of weight and symbolism as well in terms of Ogden in our past.
Yeah.
Not the tamest street, we'll say.
Sure.
Right, in Ogden.
Yeah.
And so we talked a lot about your upbringing on Ogden Avenue and why that meant being an officer in Ogden starting as a reserve, right?
Yeah, definitely. I learned a lot about life just from being a small child, and most people don't really understand how much you retain as you grow up from those early experiences in your childhood. But Ogden Avenue is a very diverse community when I grew up in it, and so that's what I knew, is just diversity, and everybody was different, but everybody fit in. There was no difference, and so it really shaped who I was as I grew up. And like I said, because I did see crime growing up, and it shaped me into wanting to be an officer, I believe. I think it was internally in me. It wasn't until I got older that I really made that decision. But when I did, I'm coming back to Ogden, to the point where, as you mentioned, I stepped in to be a reserve officer. I wanted to work here. This is where I wanted to be. And if I was going to learn to be a police officer, I wanted it to be here. And thankfully that worked out. Eventually got hired full-time as an officer, and have spent the last 24 years working here for Ogden Police Department.
And that was a time when we had a reserve program. Mm-hmm. It was also a time where we had hundreds of applicants per position to be a police officer. And so there was a lot of demand to be a reserve officer, hopefully preparing and in the wings to become an officer, right?
Definitely. In when I was a reserve, we probably had roughly 50 reserve officers at the time, and it was a big contingency, and they were very beneficial to the city in helping with special events and a lot of different coordinated events. And as you mentioned, over time, the desire to be a police officer dropped, and we weren't seeing the candidates that were applying for the job. When I applied, there was probably 150 people sitting in the old Marshall White gym doing a police test. Now, I would love to see 150 applicants per application process, but unfortunately, we're probably more in the 40 or 50 range on a good testing process, and so it was competitive, which also meant why I wanted to get into reserves, to learn the job, to experience the job, and prepare myself to eventually take the step to be a full-time officer.
And so, just to be clear for everybody watching or listening, to be a reserve means that you are a volunteer.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so how long were you basically a volunteer reserve officer?
Roughly about a year. I spent about a year, and through that I did ride-alongs with officers. I worked the Christmas Village, providing security, some New Year's Eve event, things like that I helped participate in. But yeah, it's volunteer. It was you put on the police uniform, you're going out and representing the Ogden City Police Department, but you're an auxiliary unit that's there to help and provide additional support and resources. But yeah, it was a great experience, one I don't regret, one I'm grateful for, and I learned a lot from it. I learned a lot. A lot of people may not have that same experience as I may have in the Reserve Corps, but I definitely gravitated towards those individuals who showed me what being an Ogden cop was and what it meant to be and why there should be pride in it, which only drove me further to want to be a police officer here in Ogden. And as a side, I was offered a job at another agency before an opportunity opened in Ogden, and I didn't accept that job because this is where I wanted to be, and I accepted this job. And of course, I'm very grateful now. So
instead of taking compensation, I'm going to stay working for free because I want to work in Ogden.
Yep, absolutely.
Right, and that's the difference between Ogden and other communities. This is a place that we focus with intent because we feel a sense of purpose here. To me, it's my why working here. There's no other city I want to be the mayor of, period.
Yeah.
If it wasn't in Ogden, I don't care to be a mayor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all about Ogden. Mm-hmm. So I felt that from you in terms of being an officer. If you want to be an officer, it's going to be in Ogden. And that's the answer to the why Ogden, right?
Yeah.
So as you go on about your career, what are the experiences of growing up on Ogden Avenue, of being a kid in Ogden and on the streets of Ogden that inform the way that you are as an officer on the streets of Ogden?
Yeah, I think it made me realize that we all come from varying walks of life. Having grown up in a family that was fairly low income, and we had our difficulties living paycheck to paycheck, I think it gave me a different perspective on when people are having their most difficult days, that everybody's human, everybody's a person. No matter the circumstance that they're in, they are a human, they're as a person. Unfortunately, my family was not immune to that. My mom had significant drug history and issues as I grew up. As I got older, they got more and more severe. Unfortunately, to the point that we've had no contact, or I haven't had contact with her for many years, unfortunately. Makes me sad, but it also makes me empathetic to what is happening to individuals in their circumstances. I understand, anybody that calls the police, it's their worst day, it's their worst moment. And so I think growing up in that environment helped me understand that it may seem like one of a bunch of calls in a call list, but the reality is that person who made that phone call, it is what matters. It's what matters to them. It's affecting their lives, and we need to understand that. We need to respect that. And I think just kind of the growing up the way I grew up helped me understand that.
Well, I really appreciate that you would share that. When we had Diana Lopez from Ogden Police Department here on the show, she talked about one of the biggest challenges that she sees is that the community doesn't always see our officers as people. But at the end of the day, if you sit and you talk and you ask, you see who they are, and they're good people, genuine people that want to make impact and a difference, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And over your career, you've made a huge impact and difference in Ogden. Tell us quickly about the roles you've had between being a reserve and then becoming a full-time officer to being chief.
Yeah. So in the last 24 years, you think back and you think, wow, that's a long time. But then I think back, I've had an opportunity to do a lot of great things since I've worked for the Ogden Police Department. Just came out, worked 5 straight years as a patrol officer, handling calls for service, providing assistance to our community. From there, I got moved to our gang unit. Spent another 4 years as a gang detective. Got a lot of knowledge and experience in the job in that particular field. From there, I eventually went to the crime reduction unit, had an opportunity to work in that unit, which is just heavily geared at addressing crime in our community so that it can make our community safer. And so I just kind of learned a whole different aspect of police work through that field. From there, I was promoted to sergeant, worked in patrol. I got the opportunity to be a sergeant in the crime reduction unit, a sergeant in the gang unit. Especially, and at that time when I became the gang sergeant, we had moved to a new system where the gang unit was under the strike force umbrella. So I had the opportunity to kind of help build what that program is with the gang unit out there. So there was a lot of its administrative side of things that I got to learn through that, as well as directing a unit like the gang unit, which was fantastic. From there, I got promoted to lieutenant, worked as a watch commander, then had the opportunity to be a lieutenant in the strike force. Lieutenant in the strike force, lieutenant in the CRU, lieutenant over the gang unit. So a lot of those opportunities, and then eventually to captain, where I was over both sides at one point, the field operations division and the patrol division or uniform division. And gained a lot of experience and knowledge in that, overseeing both sides of the house of a police department. And then luckily enough, under Chief Young, I was selected to be the deputy chief, and learned a great deal in that position. And I think all of those experiences are what I believe prepared me for being the chief. But I will say, to your point that you kind of made earlier, is that I didn't want to become a chief. I wanted to become the chief of Ogden. This wasn't about what other city I might be able to advance my career in. It was, if I didn't get chief, then I was going to be content as the deputy chief for Ogden City. This is where I want to be. Yeah. This is where my career will finish out. And I feel blessed that I have the opportunity to lead as the chief at this point. And so to that, I thank you for giving me the opportunity. It means a lot to me.
Well, thanks for stepping up. Being a leader, especially in these positions, it's pretty dang hard. We are under immense amount of pressure all the time, right? And it's important that we hire strong people who have a strong will and a sense of self, enough confidence in self to be able to handle all those pressures. Because at least for me, and I see this from you, I don't pray for a lighter load. I pray for a stronger back. And we've got to have strong backs to carry the kind of burdens and the loads that we do. And frankly, it's during the heavy burden periods that we've had together, because anytime, I don't know if you're a mayor of a city like ours and you have a police department like we do, things happen. We go through things. Mm-hmm. We respond to things. Our officers have challenges every day, and things come up that are just hard, but that's because the job is just hard. But hard times create hard men and women, and I see a lot of that from you and from our department. We've got officers carrying heavy burdens every day on behalf of our people, of our city. And I've built a lot of respect for the department in watching that. Those kind of experiences matter, right? Yeah. So, but one of the questions that I asked you also during the interview was that I didn't want to hire, Chief Young did a great job, but I wasn't looking for a Chief Young part 2. I was looking for, I want to look for someone that's going to build on what Chief Young did, just like Chief Young built on what Chief Watt did, who built on, right, the chiefs before and all of the shoulders that we all stand on. I want to continue to build on. And so one of the questions I asked you was, what do you want your legacy to be as a chief? And this is another place where I think you and I found fit, right? Yeah. And we had Lieutenant Kai's on the show. He talked a lot about history. Mm-hmm. If you don't mind starting there. Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I feel blessed to have followed Chief Young and been under Chief Watt's leadership, Mike Ashman, John Greiner. I learned a lot from all of them. But I also realize that I have to find my way, right, and a direction to continue carrying the police department forward.
Just because we're moving forward doesn't mean we always will. And so my role in stepping in was to make sure that we do that we have that. And so as you talked about the history of the police department, I look at where Ogden City Police Department started. And a lot of people know the history and the history of how old our agency is, roughly 170 years old. 1855. There's a lot of history in between now and then that I think is lost to a lot of people, which I very much appreciate you having Lieutenant Kai's on here, who has become really a resident historian for us. And it's fantastic because he's keeping that history for us. But part of my goal is to bring that history back, to bring back what it means to be an Ogden City officer, that you aren't just the next name on a piece of paper, that you can look at the wall in our department and see you come from something so much bigger, that you're standing on the shoulder of giants that came before you. That's important to me because I don't want people to believe I'm just another name, I'm just another ID number, that you are a part of something bigger than yourselves. And so we're really going to push to bring that back. One of the big things that I'm doing initially is we did some research. We found, and may seem like a small thing, but it's the first step, and it's our badge. This is a great badge. It has history. It will always be a part of our organization, and it will carry forward in our organization. However, I want to go back to the badge that predated this, that you're seeing in most of our historical pictures. So we're bringing that back to kind of have that first start, that first kickstart of let's remember who we are, where we came from. And you mentioned Marshall White earlier. As you know, Sergeant White, there was a lot of people I was shocked to tell me that they had no idea that the Marshall White was named after a fallen officer. And that hurt me deep. Like to have people not even understand why that building was named or who the individual it was named after. I took it personal as a member of the Ogden Police Department that I failed, that we didn't do our part to make sure people know the legacy of Marshall White. Because it has to be more than just the name on the building. That is a great tribute, and we need to carry a way forward. And so, again, the badge we're going to would have been a badge that Marshall White wore at one time as well. So I think that's a pretty cool step where we're moving. So history is big to me, and where you came from, why you're doing what you're doing, and that it is more than just putting a uniform on and signing a roster.
So we're going to get to the Marshall White here in a little bit, but let's talk about history for a minute, because and we already talked about fit, but for me, when you mentioned history and you talked about standing on the shoulder of the giants that precede us, it fit well. And this is just a sneak peek into some of the conversations that you and I have had together since that time, is that I don't want our employees of the city to just feel like they're coming and punching a clock. I want them to feel like they're coming to a place that they're a part of, that they're a part of a mission and a vision and a purpose when they're here, and that any officer that comes to work for us recognizes that they're a part of something special. One, because of the history that predates them, but two, is because of the culture that we create while they're here. And so I loved your vision for your legacy being bringing the history back, because it fits with me and my vision and yours as well, for making sure people recognize where we come from and what we are stewards of while we're here. And to me, the more I've learned about who we are as a city, it gives me more fulfillment and fit and feeling that I am where I should be, right?
Yeah.
And I want all of our officers to feel the same way. I want all of our employees to. And so I appreciate the work you're doing to bring that history back so that our officers do recognize where we are, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you think forward too, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
When you think about how much history is behind you and how much we talk about the history and the contributions of the past, well, that's kind of us right now.
Yeah.
So the things we do matter right now.
Yeah. Because they will be our history. They'll be our legacy. They'll be what we,
right?
And so that's what I'm trying to convey to our department is that we come from this history, but you're also a part of it now. You're a part of that history and that legacy that this department will carry forward for years to come.
And so that's a fast forward through the many, many, many hours and hours of conversation that Chief and I have had together, is as you become my chief, I become your mayor, is what are we going to do moving forward and why? And for me, as we've talked about that, when you think about the significance of the history, the significance of our contributions now, and that in the future, what we are doing now is the legacy that we leave behind, it makes you think really long and hard about what we do and what we don't do. And we talk a lot. You invite me to every swearing in and every promotion ceremony, and I don't miss them. If I'm in town, I don't miss those, because that's an opportunity for us to share our expectation with our officers. And we make it really clear that the Constitution is our compass, and that the Constitution is the framework for the rule of law, and that the laws set a framework for the policies we have as a department that are refined over time through case law and trial and error, long history, and that informs your instinct or your training, and that your training is honed and your instincts are honed based on that training.
Mm-hmm.
And so I make it really clear, and you help reinforce, and you kind of chief it up for me to make sure that our officers hear it and live it and lead it every day, is that we expect you to follow the law and to follow your training and to follow your instincts, not to worry about politics, because there's no place for politics in the police department. This is not a political body. This is an entity that's rooted in the rule of law, period. And they love that. That's all they ask for, accountability to the law.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah, it's been, I mean, I think first off, I appreciate the fact that you do show up. You show up, and it's meaningful to our department that you do show up. It's meaningful to the officers, the ones coming in, to the ones who already work here. Because it's, people can read emails, people can hear or hearsay from somebody, but when the words are coming directly from your mouth, it has that much more meaning. And so I appreciate that. And it also makes my job easier when I talk to the officers about what we're doing, the directions we're heading, what we expect of them, that it's a united front, and they believe it, because they don't have to wonder what the person above me thinks or below me thinks, that we're all on the same page. And so, when we bring in new officers, we want to understand what the culture of Ogden City is, what they're coming into, the type of work that they're going to be involved in. Ogden's a busy city. We have work that we have to do, but I expect it to be done professionally, like you said, using the Constitution as our compass, with the goal of making our city safe and safer. We've seen historic drops in crime, and my goal is to continue that trend, and show the officers that we support them so that they can go out and do their work, back them when they're making the decisions that they need to make. And they're going to make hard decisions, and they're going to have to make those hard decisions. And we have to find a way to provide them the resources, the training, the tools that they need to be successful when it's a split-second decision. And so I am fully in on making sure that they have that and those resources. And by you stepping in and kind of conveying that in those swearing-ins and promotional processes only delivers it to the next level, that we've got the support. And so it strengthens them to want to go out and do it, to go out there and work and make our community safe, to protect victims, to protect our neighborhoods, and to do it the right way for the right reasons. And so I think we've had a lot of really good messaging in the last group since you've become the mayor. I think the officers are really accepting it. I've gotten some recent feedback from officers that is very meaningful to me, that we're going in the right direction, that the officers feel supported, but they feel supported to go do the right things, to go do the right job. And it's a good feeling.
I love that the feedback that I've heard from them is they want to do the right things for the right reasons and in the right ways.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And so when we talk about accountability, I don't think anybody's more accountable than they are to themselves and to each other. And that's something that the public should know, is that we're not making it up. And I want the officers to know, and I hope some of them watch this, because I'm not just saying it in private. I want the whole community to hear me say these things. That I'm not here to politicize you. I'm here to lead for you and with you. Mm-hmm. I'm here to help provide for you and to help ensure that you have the tools, the training, and the resources, and the ability to succeed, because your success is Ogden's success. Because it's more than just a crime rate, it's actual lives, just like you talked about growing up here.
Yeah.
Certainly we have to track metrics. You're the most data-driven department we have in the city is Ogden PD.
Sure.
But it's more than a number, it's actual people, right?
Yep.
And so the impact is real that the police department makes.
Yeah, and it's important to I think the overall health of the city, and then factors into every part of what the city is trying to do, and development and growth and business. And It's critical that we are using data to drive us forward to do the right things to make our city a place where people want to come, live, work, and play. And data, you're exactly right, is important, and we track it. We have CompStat every month. But to your point, data is also behind that is people, the community. That data tells me something about what's happening in our community, the victims in our community, those that need our assistance and help. No matter which walk of life you come from, we can sometimes get so stuck on data that we're just looking at numbers, and we always have to remind ourselves that the numbers are more than that. And so that I think is what carries us forward when we go out, and why officers are driven to do the right things, why they want to help the individuals, why they go the extra mile on an investigation. And to your point too, officers do not want officers who make them look bad. As much as somebody might, or individuals may believe that that's not the case. A bad officer only makes the rest of the department and law enforcement as a whole look bad. They don't want that. Officers do not want that. They want those individuals who are giving them a bad name, doing the wrong things, out just as much as any community member does. I do as the chief. We're not going to allow those types of behaviors in our department. And I'm happy to say I don't believe we have that at the Ogden Police Department. I think we have a lot of driven officers that want to do the right things for the right reasons, and are here for the right reasons. They're doing this for the right reasons.
And what else is important about accountability is, I think we have because of everything that the world has been through in recent years, that we automatically go to the worst case scenario and think about that. But what precedes that is a whole culture of accountability and integrity and leadership, management, etc. And so every day, nobody's perfect, period. Like I'm never perfect. But what we try to do is we try to give each other the support and the feedback that they need along the way to be better every day. And that's an important tenet of the Ogden Way, is that we talk about a growth mindset. We show up and we wake up every day in a better place to be better today, right? And so our officers deserve to work in that kind of environment, but also to have the support and leadership from you and I, that when they're doing something, or we see a sign of something that isn't just what we want, there's correction points, right? Mm-hmm. And that's leadership, so that we hope to avoid the major situations, because we've had time together where we engage and we provide input and feedback, and we're providing that in a way that allows them to internalize the input and put it toward their own growth and their greatness, right?
Yeah.
Growth every day equals greatness someday.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're always after, and that's our mindset and an ethos and a spirit of greatness that we're trying to create here through what we call the Ogden Way. And I see it every day at the Ogden Police Department. And I think that's something that people that are watching, I wish you could see it the way I do. I wish you had access the way I do, but there's only one mayor in the town. Sure. But if everybody got to see what I'm seeing and giving an honest look at, I as you know, I arrived with an external exposure to the department, mm-hmm. and I got to live through where we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate the opportunity just to share a lot of this, because I think the community is really proud of our department. And if they saw all of the things that I saw, it would reinforce and double down on that pride of our department, I promise.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is I realize that the vast majority of the Ogden City community supports the Ogden Police Department, and we feel that. I feel blessed by the support we have from the Ogden community. I've had the opportunity to attend the FBI National Academy, and so I have quite a few friends throughout law enforcement across the country, and not all of them have the same situation as we have here. They're shocked to hear of some of the kindnesses that happen, and when we were posting on social media about community members bringing stuff to the police department, and they're just shocked that that's happening in our communities. And so it's not lost on me. We have a phenomenal community, and that's why it is important that we have great officers, that we provide them the training they need. We almost exceed the amount of required training our officers have, because it's that important to us, much to your point of making sure our people have the resources, and that when there is some sort of a deviation from policy or an issue, that we have leaders that are able to step in, resolve those issues, and are capable of it, of having those conversations. And we hold our supervisors accountable to that. That's important. That's part of being. You're not a manager. You're a leader. You do have to manage things, but you need to lead people. And so that's important in that. The training, the resources we're giving them to be better every day is important. That's why when we say post requires 40 hours of training, well, we're probably going to hit 80 to 100 per officer. I think we hit 94 hours of training per officer last year because that's a priority. We want the best because we believe we have the best. So exactly.
And when you're the best, you get the best.
Yeah, yeah.
It attracts more of the same. You attract what you are. Well, I really admire the men and women of the department because, again, another thing that I tell them in our swearing in is we're looking for men and women of integrity and of character. We're looking for great men and women because you can't be a great officer unless you're a great human being, great person. Mm-hmm. And so who we hire really matters. And when you get a good one, hanging on to them and supporting them is important. But they're not just officers. They're also mentors, potentially. Mm-hmm. And you also talked about what you want your legacy to be. And you talked a lot about youth, and you talked about the Marshall White Center. And as you know, and hopefully everyone else knows, that youth is the thing that matters a ton to me. And I love the idea so that you've brought to the table to help make sure that our officers are in a place to be mentors for our youth. Yeah. Can you share the example?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be kind of the second part of what I'd like my legacy, and that is enhancing our relationship with youth. I think we've done a pretty good job of engaging the community as a whole in community events. I think we've done a lot of really great things, and I think under Chief Young and Chief Watt, those things got enhanced significantly from years past. And so when I look at that and say, well, how do I make that better or improve on that? And it's the youth. How do we engage with the kids that live here in Ogden City? Because my hope is the legacy is that I don't necessarily see the impact. I may be long gone before the long-term impacts of that relationship happen. So again, it's not about me and now and right now and in this time. It's what potentially is going to come to fruition over time. But yeah, I'm looking at amping up some programming involving our officers with the youth. We have a phenomenal group of school resource officers that go every day and engage with students and with kids in our community. And I want to capitalize that in the summer. In the summer, we often take those SROs and have to kind of piecemeal them out. But when we have officers like that have that propensity to do well with youth and with kids, like you've got to take advantage of that. It's built in. It's already a built-in situation. So
that's not dispatch calling, is it?
No, thankfully, no.
Okay.
Thankfully, no, it's not. Well, I'll have a talk with who that was. So the goal is, and I think it's perfect timing with the Marshall White Center opening up. I think it's going to be a phenomenal facility where we can engage with youth more regularly. We're looking at bringing in a program called Rad Kids, which is going to allow officers to guide, lead, and teach kids in protecting themselves against bullying, against other kid bullying, to adult situations, to online safety, to a whole myriad of things. But it also is done in a way that it is fun and engaging and really builds a relationship between law enforcement and the community, but also empowers the kids for the future and who they'll be. And so that's one big step. We've already got officers that are heading to training to get some certification in teaching that. But I also want to expound on that. We've had some early meetings with the Ogden City Recreation Department about how we can have law enforcement more engaged in some of the activities that are happening in recreation. So those are things that are coming that again, will put us in the same room with kids to have meaningful engagement. Because you've mentioned earlier that the officers are people, and you don't know their story, you don't know where they come from, and these potentially give kids and the youth an opportunity to learn that, and to realize that we're all just people, and we're out there to support each other. And so this, I think it's going to be. I'm excited for it. I really am. I'm super excited. I beyond Marshall White, I want to take the advantage of some facilities potentially using Ben Lomond High out on the north end of Ogden City to engage there, to spread it out, to make and give everybody an opportunity. Because I realize that everybody has the ability to be everywhere and get kids everywhere, and so we want to facilitate these environments where they can do it easily. So I hope to build and grow on that. We're working on it now heavily to kind of build what that program is, but that youth engagement is going to be a big part of what we do moving forward.
Well, and it fits with your legacy and your desire to tap into our history of our department at the Marshall White with Detective Doc Sergeant White, and his name on the building, and so that'll be fun to also activate that, but it also fits within the initiative where we're driving on the north end of town, where we've met with students and we've had Dolores Banks Green and also the publisher of the Standard Examiner, Jim Koenig here, who is also participating in kind of activating and engaging on the north end of town more and making sure that the whole north end of town knows that they're a part of Ogden and that we see them and that we're providing and serving them. And there's no better place to do that than Ben Lomond.
Yeah.
And it's a great time because we've got a really cooperative and collaborative school district and administration that's really helpful and supportive, not just of Ogden City, but especially of the police department with the SROs. We're really starting to see these things come together and everybody's starting to drive in the same direction, right?
Yeah. We've had some really good meetings with the school district recently about this, and they're excited for it as much as we're excited for it, and kind of creating a partnership on this moving forward. So beyond school, right? What is our engagement beyond school? And so I'm very, very grateful that the school district is, so supportive of wanting to help us engage in this and sees the importance in it as well. So I'm super excited for everybody that's been willing to engage in these conversations and are eager to be a part of it. So yeah. I'm excited.
Well, we've talked a lot about you. We've talked about us, our relationship. We've talked about how you grew up and the people of Ogden. We're talking about kids and youth. We're talking about the north end of town. We've talked a lot about the people. Because, again, when we talk about data, we have to remember the people. And so we've talked about people. Let's talk quickly about the data and what it's saying about the trajectory of Ogden and where we've come from since you were a kid.
Yeah.
Right? We've come a long way. And what most people won't recognize is just how far we've come.
Yeah. Ogden is a much, much different city from when I was a kid. And I will say even from when I started here as a police officer. I started here in 2000, and in that 24 years, it's drastically changed. When you look at the numbers, since 2016, we're down 55% in crime, which is shocking. Those are some shocking numbers. You look at, if you take per 10,000, we're roughly 260 crimes per 10,000. And you compare to other cities, we're very low in the state. We're at a reasonable place. Like a city like Sandy is roughly the same, roughly 260 per 10,000 people. What we tend to battle more than anything now is that perception, the perception of crime, and people think back to the Ogden of the 80s and 90s, and we are no longer that city, I think. And the police department has a part in that, but there is so much more that's played into that. All of the city departments have played a huge factor into where the city is. We're just one spoke in the wheel of carrying that forward. There's been a lot of things done through all the various departments that truly have just kind of reinvented Ogden and really made it not a place where crime thrives. But unfortunately, we have to overcome this continued perception. And so I do have a goal to try to combat that this isn't the city that people have to fear to come to. You can come down here and walk around at night. You can go and experience 25th Street in the evening. You can walk to and from the junction to downtown 25th Street and know that you'll be safe. Know that you have officers that are out there patrolling and continuing to make the city safe. Our numbers are phenomenal, and we're continuing that trend as we continue to move forward. And my goal as the chief is to not go backwards. We cannot go backwards. We have to continue forward and maintain the safe city that's been created over the last 20 years.
So I know Mayor Zoltansky really well from Sandy City.
Mm-hmm.
They run an amazing place.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're proud of the city that they are. They're a vibrant, thriving city, succeeding and
Yep.
Right. And so when we talk about our Part 1 crime rates being the same as Sandy City, it's not a reflection of theirs going up.
No.
It's a reflection of how much ours have gone down.
100%.
And when we talk about ours coming down that much, it's a reflection of how far we've come as a city. I still feel like we have a lot of the same values and grit and determination and so on as a city. We're blue collar, roll up your sleeves mentality city. But it's so amazing to be able to stand alongside a Sandy City and a Mayor Zoltansky to talk about the safety of our city.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the exact point. I feel grateful to be able to compare ourselves to the safety of Sandy, because they are a fantastic city. And so what I want to compare ourselves to are those cities that are doing great things that we can say we are too.
Right.
We're doing those same great things to make a great, safe city.
And I want Sandy to continue to thrive, and for them to drive their numbers down where they can too.
Yeah.
And that we continue to do the same.
Absolutely.
Because it creates a safer environment for people to succeed in. And that's really, in the big picture, when we talk about what all the departments are doing, it's not just the city and the departments, it's the community broader than that. And so when we talk about the Ogden Way, what we're going to be doing in the future is we're setting the table for community partners and anchors to come. And the Ogden Way is a framework and a vision that fits all of us together and drives all of us in the same direction. And I believe when we start doing that kind of work of alignment and achieving and thriving and driving all in the same direction, we're going to see even bigger and better outcomes to help people succeed and to thrive and to connect with opportunities through an environment for success.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the police department provides, and so does fire. Those are two of the most important, most fundamental services that any city can provide, period, that we will never farm out to anybody.
Yeah.
That's the city does that, and that's that. We do it with the support of the cities around us and the county that we're in, and with the troopers in the state that we live in. Those services are ours to manage and to deliver for people. And I'm proud to say that we have the best police department in the state of Utah and beyond. And I'm thankful to have the best police chief, period, to help to lead the best officers, period, for the best city on the planet. There's nowhere I want to be but here. And there's no one I want to be my chief than you. There's no department that I want other than OPD.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm truly honored and blessed to be where I'm at. I'm truly honored to serve the officers of the Ogden City Police Department. I feel like I echo the exact same thing you're saying, is that I am grateful for where I'm at and being able to serve the individuals in our department in this city. It's second to none, and beyond grateful for it.
Well, we end every episode with a call to action. And so today I want to encourage and challenge anybody that's watching or listening. If you're looking for opportunity, if there's a lot of change afoot right now, there's changes at the federal level. There are pivots happening within the workforce. If you're looking for a new opportunity, I encourage you, look to the Ogden Police Department. If you know somebody that is potentially facing layoff or a career change because of changes at the federal level or within different industries, and they're looking for something to do, look at the Ogden Police Department. If you or someone you know is an officer at another department and they're looking for a place that they can work and thrive and have access to all of the different bureaus and specialties that you mentioned at your career and more, encourage them to look at Ogden Police Department. If you know anybody that wants to be great, who's on their journey toward greatness, and they're looking for a place where they can be their best, look to Ogden City, look to Ogden Police Department. That's the call to action that I think I want to end on. Because if you do, we've got great opportunities coming forward for people, not just as officers, but as mentors in our community, right?
Yep.
Be a part of something special. Stand on the shoulders of the giants. Be a giant alongside us that the future will stand on, and then be a mentor for that future while you're here. Can you think of a better play?
Nope. I think that you've said it perfectly. We have a lot of resources. Reach out. We want to talk to all of you. Anybody who has interest, we want to talk with you you can learn what Ogden City's about, whether you're currently working as one or have an interest in. We happy to talk with you.
Well, I'm with you. There is no better way because there's only one way, and it is the Ogden Way. And that's how we'll finish. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on the Ogden Way podcast, a place where we talk about Ogden stories through the lens and through the stories of Ogden's people. Today, Ogden Police Chief Jake Sube, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody for being with us today.